go-to has to be kind of cute, but also aggressive, like a little bulldog. Right. Can you give us your best turbo impression? Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to my extended stay apartment, where it is currently snowy as fuck outside. I hope everyone's had a good week. My week has been pretty sweet, so I hope that passes on to y'all as well. And I'm pretty excited about this video as well. Subject to this video has a rear wing that stretches higher than any of our bank accounts and more slots than a Las Vegas casino. It is, of course, the iconic Ferrari F40. Now, I should say, and I know that I'll have the entirety of the internet coming after me, or just the 40 or 50 of you that decide to tune into this video, I don't love the Ferrari F40, and I know everyone's gonna say, oh, but bro, because race car, oh, it's just attracting, you wouldn't understand. I'm just gonna leave this up here and let y'all decide for yourselves. But yeah, that's not to say I hate the F40. I just think it kind of gets hyped up as like the ultimate, bare bones car. But obviously, like, it's heavier than the 288 GTO, and the 288 GTO is not exactly a walk in the park either. That's far from a luxury car. It was built to be a Group B rally car, which is like as radical as a car gets, basically. But yeah, I digress. Obviously, the F40 is still freaking rad, and it's why I'm doing a video on it instead of the 288 GTO. I think there is just something a little bit cooler and more interesting to the F40. But I don't think it's as perfect as everyone says. As you'll see through this video, I ended up kind of deciding to not call my design for this an F40. I decided to call it an SP4 just because that's what Ferrari is basically doing right now. They're not really making anything that's an exact kind of copy redesign. They're not going to be pulling a Countach anytime soon. But yeah, my design ends up having a lot of influence from especially something like the 512S, which is another one of my favorite Ferrari racing sporty cars. So with the chit chat out of the way, let's get into the actual design video. Alright, so I'm not going to talk through too much of this, but I did end up following through on the idea I had last week, which is basically just to sketch these from scratch and stop short of sketching over something that already exists, because it just helps me make it look a little bit cooler. But you'll see kind of my process through doing something like this. Again, these are all coming from a sketchbook, so I didn't just do this on the spot. But I'll usually rough in with this kind of broad brush first. It just generally helps me with the proportions and perspective a bit more. It kind of allows me to take that like very far out view, which is really what perspective and proportions are, is just sort of a zoomed out view of something. And then I'll sketch over that with that tighter pencil that you'll see coming in. I ended up choosing two views that, one, are completely different than anything I'm showing at the beginning of the video, but two, mostly that I thought showed the design the best. I think of the, maybe 6 or so views that I did in my sketchbook, I thought these are the two that kind of show the design most succinctly. So they're the views that kind of help explain a full-blown, sport track car the best, in my opinion. The design ended up going down a pretty geometric kind of origami approach to the surfacing, just because I feel like that's kind of always what the F40 was, is just at its essence, it's very flat, it's very geometric, and that's kind of what we all like about it. And I also really wanted to play up that kind of arrow-like stance to it, so that gets kind of taken to an extreme. starting to come to the end of the sketching. I'll just explain kind of what I started to think about this vehicle as I went through it and as the kind of time went by since I sketched it out. To me, this ended up sort of becoming an attempt to be Ferrari's answer to something like the Aston Martin Valkyrie, which I think weirdly you could say is kind of a natural evolution of something like an F40, just, you know, absolute pinnacle of what a sports car can be. And so then I just started thinking about ways that I could have it be done differently than a Valkyrie and kind of have things that are more exciting and unique to this vehicle. So I started thinking about the material breakup, because obviously I've slammed and cheated like everything on this sketch, but I don't really want to lose that. So I decided material breakup could be kind of a good way to allow myself to cheat it. So I decided to have that top surface basically be a formed piece of polycarbonate, and I figured that could do a lot of things. One, it could sort of expose the nerdy mechanical details that I think get sort of lost when a vehicle like this goes electric. So by having those just constantly exposed through, you know, like a translucent / transparent piece of polycarbonate, you could sort of, you know, bring back some of that cool detail. It also obviously opened up the visibility. Clearly, like, the reasoning behind why a DLO ends up being so high is often because it has to allow the occupants to see over the hood of a vehicle. And if you kind of just have the whole thing on that top surface be polycarbonate and therefore visible, you don't really need the DLO to be as high, and you can slam the occupants a lot lower into kind of an F1 style seating. I figure that'll make it basically feel like an enclosed go-kart, which will give this kind of cool, you know, open wheel, closed wheel experience to it. And I think it just generally, takes the approach of the original F40 to the next level, just kind of natural continuation of that story. And that's the end of the process. So as usual, please let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Let me know if I was a bad boy and cheated the proportions a bit too much, or if you think the polycarbonate solution is a viable one. Curious to know if there's any like glaring flaws with that idea. But stay tuned for next week. I have something pretty exciting planned. This is one of my all-time favorite cars, and it's not going to be a sports car finally, because I've done way too many of them and it's kind of boring. The world is not just made up of sports cars. So stay tuned. Hope everyone has a great week, great weekend depending on when I release this, and I'll see you next time.